Thank you for joining us today on the Living Room Disciple podcast. I'm incredibly excited because I have the amazing opportunity to share with you the conversation I had with Sarah Juers, who is a fantastic Christian music artist who's coming on today to talk a little bit about how the music that we listen to forms us more or less like Jesus, a little bit about her story and about the music that she makes. There's going to be links to her newest EP, Cyberspace, and the music for today's episode actually comes from her most recent EP. So make sure to check it out, and I hope you enjoy the conversation today. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Living Room Disciple podcast, where discipleship finds a home. Sarah, thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Living Room Disciple podcast. It is so good to have you here.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here, Phil.
Okay, so you are breaking the ice, and you are our first guest outside of academic circles, which I am like deeply gleeful for, because although I hope to be a thoughtful human, I'm really have a passion for art more than academics, if I'm really honest. But don't tell any of my past guests.
That's great. It's just a different kind of deepful thought.
I agree with that very, very, very much. And I'm excited to get into that actually in a moment, because the conversation I'm hoping just to kind of like preview gets into like that, how does music and art form us as humans? But before I do, I just want to share with everyone out there like a little story. So I'm always on the lookout for new artists and new music. It's just I'm a coffee snob and I'm a music snob. So I hope in everything else in my life I'm humble, but in those two areas the Lord has a work to do on my heart. And I found your EP, Cyberspace, probably like 2 months ago. And I heard a single somewhere else, and I was like, I'm going to check her out. And I was probably 2 songs in, and I was hooked. And not only did it sound fantastic, we'll throw some clips in some of our segue points in the podcast, but I was really impacted by the quality of the lyrics and the intent of the lyrics. Could you just tell us a little bit, just to kind of get to know you a little bit about that EP and where the inspiration for that came from?
Yeah. It's so amazing every time hearing people talk about it. It's so crazy to me still. I say this all the time, but it really is so weird to hear that you have listened to it, like something that I put out. Very odd.
And it's like you teleported your thoughts into my brain too, which is super cool.
How funny. I love that though. That's like what I love about music is like how, yeah. I have so many thoughts. So what I love about music though is how it is able to express something inside of us that we somehow can't express, and for whatever reason sometimes it takes somebody else writing about it for us to help us understand what that feeling is or whatever. But so that's amazing that I did that for you. So as far as Cyberspace, a lot of almost every single one of my albums, every one of my albums is basically just, I'll end up having 8 or, however many songs, where Cyberspace is like, I probably had a little bit more, but like maybe I had 4, 5, 6 songs that all happen to be the same theme, because I think like I just write off of what I'm going through, like what I
just
write
like
is
in that
what I'm feeling
moment in that season.
Yeah, like that's just how I do it. Like I write because I like need to write to process and to heal and to all that. So like for Cyberspace, I had written a few songs. I'm like, okay, these all have the same theme. The theme being like feeling a little bit out of touch with myself, because I think there's so many there's so many ways you can kind of start to feel a little bit out of touch with yourself, but a huge way is like social media in the sense, like, because if you start to care about other people's perception of you more than you care about who you really are, it can just
Yeah.
get super messy. And then the whole idea of cyberspace is like, we are spending so much time trying to present ourselves and our life a certain way to people that we believe a lie. Like, we believe the lie that we're telling other people. It's like, or like, and for example, even like, okay, like with Christians, right? Like, you can be like, oh, I want to, let's say even you're like, oh, I want to encourage people, right? But if you're not careful, like, it can be, I want people to think that I am a good Christian. I want people to think that I'm this. So I'm going to read my Bible for the sake.
People's perception of you,
yes,
right?
Yes. So like, I'm reading my Bible to post on Instagram, like, instead of I'm reading my Bible to fill me up. Or, so it's like,
I'm serving
kind of
people
concept.
so people know that I'm somebody who serves people.
Yes. You get it. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm tracking with you 100%.
So I feel like that's like the kind of the main thing, and it's just like a very human thing to do. It's not social media. It's like, even if when social media didn't exist, people can fall into people's perceptions of them. It's just a different way to do it, and it's a scarier way to do it because it can.
And it's probably easier to fall into because to some extent, social media means like you walk around with a mirror in front of your face all the time. It's kind of what it's like, right? So it's hard not to do something and not reflexively take a picture of it, show it to somebody else, document it in a way that everyone else is seeing it. And so it's like, it can feel like there is no option other than I mean, goodness gracious, like, we're on a video call right now and like, I can't help but not see my face on the screen I'm seeing you in, right? Like everything about our technology is a reflection based system, it feels like.
Totally, exactly. So I think, and then again, going back to the main theme, I guess, is not only losing touch with who you really are, but obviously then losing touch with God, like being disconnected from God because you're disconnected from yourself and like reality in a way. So it's kind of the main things, becoming too vain or obsessed with yourself and like not, it's just the opposite of Jesus. So that and more, but
So I think one of the most interesting things, and I think one of the best compliments to that EP and your work, is if I was to sit down and tell someone, and I've actually tried to do this, like, you should really check this out. It's about, kind of becoming like deeply influenced by social media. It just sounds it sounds lame. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't sound like something.
Yeah. That's like, it's like funny when I try to describe it. I'm like, wait, so it's about social media. It's like, okay, like everyone's talking about that,
But it takes a different take. And I think one of these moments that I remember listening to the album, which is really funny, especially those who are listening to this who know me, I'm not on social media. And so the fact that this album like still like deeply resonated with me is interesting. And I think it speaks to the fact that it kind of goes to something beyond.
Because
I remember
I was gonna add that it's like, that's one part, right? That's one thing that I've kind of been through, but then it's also a total deeper level of like just feeling out of touch with yourself, just feeling like I don't feel like I'm in my body. Like, I kind of was always having those experiences of like, I don't feel like I'm in the moment. I feel like I'm always outside. Like, I feel like I want to be here. I want to enjoy my life. I want to have these experiences. I want to be present, but for whatever reason, I can't be. So that's like the main thing too. So it's like, like I said, like the human experience just naturally.
So tell me why would you consider that? And I think the answer might be obvious to you, but let's kind of define it for everyone. So why would you consider that a bad thing? Why is being disconnected a bad thing? And how does being disconnected, I mean, how does that, God isn't bothered by me being disconnected, is he? Like, how does that influence my relationship with the Lord?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like not being able to be present in moments. like I want to be able to be in a room full of people and really be there and like be able to enjoy the company of the people, be able to
Mm-hmm.
listen to the people. And I think it's just like an overall caring. It's an overall like I care about these people in this moment. Um I think like just like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just connection of some way like to connection like I said, like connection to yourself, to others and to God.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just like a presence of instead of
I feel
being
like that might be a
like
good way to word it, right? Like is so it's I really love the artistry behind this idea of being in your body, but there's also like I think for some people who maybe are like, what does that mean? It's it's when you're listening to someone. Tell me if I'm hearing right. Like when you're
mm-hmm.
listening to someone, you're actually listening to someone.
Mm-hmm.
Like your eyes are focusing on their face, your ears and your mind are focusing on their words, and like you're with them as they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to be there. Would you say that's kind of like what you're talking about?
Totally. Like I think it's like I think it does go deeper into like I experienced I think a pretty big stretch of depression where I just
Mm-hmm.
felt numb from everything and like I mean for lack of a
Yeah,
better term dead inside. So
sure.
like when you feel yeah, so it's like feeling out of your body almost feels like you're not living, right? It's like you're just watching your
Yeah,
body exist, you're watching yourself exist, but you're not like what it
yes.
is to truly live, right? Like so like driving in a car, you know, it's like okay, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
sitting here waiting for the time to go by instead of like being in the car, enjoying the company of my friends, like enjoying seeing nature and like all those things. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
It, and let's like kind of hone in on that for just a moment because I feel like there's probably some people who are listening very much nodding their heads. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
yeah. So I can think of one instance in the last year in which I went through a stretch of time like that. Now, mine was caused by like some external grief, right? And I'm processing through that. And I
Mm.
definitely had a season that kind of also probably played into some spiritual, like dark night of the soul kind of stuff.
Totally.
Um, and so for me, music became a really important part of maintaining my faith during that time and maintaining like my presence with the Lord during that time. I don't know. Have you had a similar experience to that? Like, are you tracking with me?
Oh, 100%. I, yeah, I mean, a general statement that I believe to the core of me, and I think it's
Hmm.
biblical, is music is the portal, almost, if you will, to the presence of God. Like,
Okay.
you know, like the story where it's like, okay, bring in the harp and the lyre so I can like pray or like so I can commune with the Lord. There's like a verse that
Hmm.
says that, and
Hmm.
I am just so like I just am convinced of it. I just think there's something so special. Like in, like sometimes if someone's talking to you or if you're listening to words, it just does not it's not able to pierce sometimes.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
you put it with music and you put it somehow when it's written in song form and there's an actual music sound to go along with it, it just is able to like feel like it's able to enter in smoothly and enter
Yes.
into my heart. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so I think like okay, because when you're going through doubt or when you're going through pain and you need words of truth to hold on to and to keep you firm, right? But sometimes hearing the words still doesn't still doesn't help, but some hearing the truth of the words with the accompaniment of music able like lets it actually come through, you know, and then I'm able to grasp the words and I'm able to hold on.
Yeah. I'm deeply tracking with this, and I think this is actually a universal thing when it comes to art in general. And I think it's the deep power that art provides. There's this quote. Oh, I wish I could remember the individual. I will put it in the show notes. Who says, um, good art can refine a community, but bad art can do an incalculable harm. And I think it's partly because what you're talking about is true, right? Like these truths in the song can sink. Like if I was to tell someone, social media and technology can really create a disconnect between you and your body and your presence of mind, and you're not going to be able to love people effectively and commune with God. They just like nod. You know what I mean? Like, right?
Yeah.
And then if someone is like listen to your, your EP for like what, 20 minutes or something like that,
Yeah.
and have these moments where you're just like, and now I can look God in the face, right? Like that moment in that song. And I was like, dang, like there is this, when there's this commitment to disconnecting from the world, or at least those world systems, I would say,
Totally.
reconnecting with the person God's made you in an effort to commune with God. But like it was said in a way that you only need to say that one lyric, and like 1,000 synapses in my brain, what I mean, like put all the pieces
Yeah.
together, and it was a beautiful moment. And I think art does that.
I think I'm finally floating towards the sand. I'll wait for low to ocean, I think we're friends. He says I know the man who knows the plan, and he says you're doing fine. Says you're right inside his hands. I just wanna stay here on the ground, soaking all the sights and all the sounds. I feel the dirt beneath my feet. I feel the beauty of life I breathe.
On the flip side, I think that a lot of people would be like, yeah, I get that. I mean, I've had a song speak to me. I've had these moments of like depth, maybe it comes from a praise and worship song at church. Maybe it comes from something, heard on the radio or whatever. I think we don't want to talk about the fact that music can have the reverse, experience for us. And, I kind of want to, I have my own axes to grind. Like I have my own pet peeves, but they're so limited, and I'm not a musician. So from your perspective, I'd love to hear, like, how have you seen music negatively affect you or affect others? And, what lessons should the church be taking away from those things?
Totally. I mean, I think super simple. Like, I am maybe alone in this, but I don't think I'm alone in this. I don't think I'm alone in this. I think you would agree with me. But you can let me know if you disagree. Let me know.
The two of us can be alone in this.
But I don't think that art and faith is disconnected in any way. Like, or like, I don't think it's two separate things. Like in general in life, I don't think anything is that separate, right? Like to me, my life is there's no compartment, I guess, if you will. Like I am one being. I don't have any compartments of me. It's like not one compartment of me as a musician, one compartment of me loves God, one compartment of me. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it's like
I do.
We start to compartmentalize ourselves in life, and I just don't think that those things exist. At least, like it doesn't exist. Like God and everything is one complete system, all happening at one time, and it's all flowing and working perfectly. And so when it comes to art, this is a two-part. I feel like there's two parts of this. So one, everything that you put into your mind, whether it be music, movie, books, whatever it is, anything that you put into your mind it is very important. Like that, when the Bible says, think of things good and true and righteous and pure, like that is everything. That's thinking. So everything we look at and set our minds on is going to create thoughts. So if something is going to put negative thoughts into your head or not truth into your head, then it's wrong, right? It's not going to bring us to thinking of things good and pure, to thinking of things lovely. And when your mind is thinking of those things, you are in peace. God keeps in perfect peace those whose minds are set on him. So my mind is not set on God and the truth of who he is and the truth of who I am. I'm not going to have peace. I'm going to have anxiety. Not even like I would, in a sense, yes, it is like, yeah, right and wrong, because like
Yeah.
there are things that are sin or will cause sin, right? Cause sin in our minds.
Yeah.
And then once something is in your mind, then you're more prone to act, and those things are sin. But like, also it's just, I'm going to have anxiety if my mind is not set on Jesus and the things of God and the things that are true and good. So it's like, it's just very simple.
I
And
am so on the same page, and it's so
yeah.
edifying to hear that like I'm not the only person, and somebody who doesn't have gray hairs
Oh my
is
gosh.
on my page.
When I tell you, like, it's so weird. I won't get too much into it, but it's very weird in our culture right now that to want to be pure is can be looked at as, I don't know, I guess can be looked at as you're being too much or you're being too religious in a way. You know what I mean? Like the pendulum of where we're
Sarah,
swung is like, you know what I mean? So it's like I
we
just
just
don't
became
understand.
best friends.
Yeah, no, we're besties. I just don't understand. I don't even understand how it's like a conversation. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But that's just me.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Well, just process like this, and this even
Yeah.
comes back to one of the songs from your EP that I just love, which is "Living a Sacrifice," and it's just this beautiful thing that's like, I am a living sacrifice. I shouldn't take that lightly. And then you're like, I'm a living sacrifice. You don't take that lightly. And I
Yeah.
think what happens when we choose to make excuses is really what it becomes, in my opinion. We make excuses
100%.
to process through and to digest any form of media that just does not glorify God. We are not taking seriously the commitment to be a living sacrifice to Jesus. We want him to take that seriously. Like, we want him to go to the cross. We want him to die for us. We want him to forgive us for sins. But then when he says, follow me and commit in the like our commitment modeled after his commitment, it's almost like, and I think we see this in the epistles, like when the apostles are writing and they're exhorting these churches. I think that this idea of I'm forgiven, so I don't actually have to like push myself and discipline myself to live a pure and holy life because Christ's blood covers me. I feel like this is the stuff that was like giving Paul a hernia. You know what I mean? As he was trying to like get them to understand that is not how this works. That like, no, it's the reverse. As genuinely like forgiven humans, we push forward harder. Like he used the example like an athlete, right? That's just like allowing their body to be beaten to train it into submission to be a good Olympian. We do that spiritually.
Yeah. And I think I'm
just not convinced that like some of this. Yeah. Okay. I'm about to get too old.
No,
No.
I love it.
Take it away, Sarah.
No, please, Phil, go off, Phil. No, I was gonna say, I think it all comes down to love. Who do we really love, right? Like, I am in no way like. Of course, I believe all these things, right? But of course, just sometimes I'm not perfectly walking in it, right? But like, but it's not.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not like, oh well, I'm not being a good Christian, or I'm not disciplining myself hard enough. It's like, no, it's like there's something wrong with what I'm loving. Like, I'm not loving God right now. There's something that I'm loving more than him. And why am I loving, like, and that means I'm believing a lie about God and about that thing. Like, so I think that's where it comes down to. It's like, if we love God and if we understand the love of God truly, and we know that his ways are perfect and good, like, then, you know, if you love me, you'll obey me, right? Like, so if I love God, I will obey him. And like I said, though, too, it's like, when I'm not walking with Jesus, when I'm not walking in the light, when I'm not meditating and focusing on him, I'm anxious in my soul. Like, it's like I physically can't. I can't do both things. Like, I just can't. I'm either living in anxiety or I'm living in peace with Jesus. Like, because like, it's just better. Like, it just is just the way that I was created.
Seems like I've lost myself inside
So I guess I'm going to use this podcast to make a small announcement. So I'm actually working on a book right now
Wow.
that hits on a little bit of what you just said. And I just literally was writing about it this morning. And so when we acknowledge that there's a tension between who we are and who God has called us to be, we have two choices ultimately. And me and my wife were talking about this. You have the one choice, which is to like acknowledge and submit. You know what I mean? Like to be like, like, Lord, forgive me. Like I am not being that person, but I'm going to strive. And this is what I want. And you walk in the grace. Well, I guess you have three options, but in the ideal option, you walk in the grace of God, knowing that you are not condemned, right? Who can bring a charge against you, right? Like you embrace the fact that you don't have that condemnation on you, but you still desire to move towards that pure and sanctified life. Then you really have the second primary option, which is to justify yourself. Instead of allowing God to justify you, you justify yourself and identify a way in which you don't need to conform to this because blank, right? Like we wrestle, and then it comes to the point where like, well, I still want to be, I have to understand the people in my community. So that's why I listen to Lady Gaga. You know what I mean? Right? Like,
Bill,
you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And so whatever it is, like we figure out a way to justify the lack of changing. 100%. And we see this in so many ways, not just music. This is also, someone comes to know Jesus in a wonderful, beautiful way. But they're like living with someone outside of marriage, and they have to go through this difficult, deep. I'm very empathetic. This is not a judgmental statement. These are the things that I've struggled with, that you've struggled with. But the question, no matter what the issue is, the right answer is still the same. And it's come to the submission of a loving Savior, right? Who is not condemning you, but is convicting you. But when we decide instead to make an excuse as to why this thing is still allowed to live in my life, we build up small and then larger walls against God and his work. I think the quick third way that we can handle those things is just allow ourselves to be beaten down by lies and condemnation, and just to feel like we're never good enough, and just allow that to weigh us down. And for those who are struggling with that, I just really want to remind us that like the saving grace of God is so powerful. And he's not bringing a charge against his elect, the people who have come into a saving relationship with him. If he's not bringing a charge, you can't either. So there's that. But I think the key is whenever we have that moment, and sometimes it happens when we meet someone. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, right? You meet someone and you're like, wow, I'm not following Jesus to the level they are.
All the time.
Right? Me too. Me and my wife, we have like people that we meet. And then again, with that person, you have two options. You'd be like, wow, I want to aspire to that and follow them as they're following Christ. Or I can find something in them that I can then use to extrapolate as to why they're not doing the right thing. So I think in a lot of ways, you probably heard this too. It's the like, well, they're just legalistic around this, or that's just too far, or whatever it is, instead of submitting to that desire for purity. I am getting off my
Phil, that was so good, Phil. No, it's so funny. It's actually, well, one thing I say all the time, and I stick by it for myself included, and I think it's a great tool personally. If ever I feel the need to justify something, it's wrong.
Yes.
Right things don't need justification. That's just simple fact. Doesn't matter what it is, small, big. Yep. If I need to justify something, if I'm coming up with reasons as to why it's good, it's wrong. Because good things don't need an explanation. So that's just throwing that out there. Number two, it's so funny that you were talking about what you just said. This Sunday, I was listening to the sermon that my pastor was giving. This thought came into my mind of because it was basically like, hey, this is like, it was like, hey, like, where are you at with how you love? I guess like, where are you at in the stages of love? And it was like 4 stages of love, right? So it's ranging from very selfish, right? And then to loving God for the sake of others. So very to selfless. And this thought came into my mind of like coming to the reality of who you really are, however disappointing that might be, is crucial for change, right? Because even though it's so hard to be like, this is where I really am, especially if you are not satisfied and unhappy and you're almost maybe can be disappointed in yourself as to where you are, you have to go through that moment to then be able to redirect and grow and become the person that you know God is calling you to be, right?
Yeah.
The person that you can be, the person that you are, right? But that you're slowly but surely
being formed into.
And so that, I love that you said that though too. I had that exact kind of thought of like, yeah.
I am a living sacrifice. I am a living sacrifice. I am a living sacrifice. I can't take it lightly.
Okay. Let me segue just a little bit.
Okay.
So I think we both alluded to this, and you kind of started, and I think I probably redirected this a little bit. I think the question that I'd love to have answered from your perspective is, what are the ways in which music has formed you? I think let's go there. Like, what are the ways in which music has formed you specifically, Sarah?
So yeah, I realized that I had that second part that'll come. We'll go back to that. But how music has formed me, I think I am grateful to God every single day that He gave me an avenue to process feelings. I didn't start writing music until I was about 15, and I had never sang in front of anybody. Like, I never thought that I would ever do music, like, in general in life. Like, I always like to draw and stuff, but I didn't have any way of, expressing myself, like, quote unquote, or like being able to, process anything that I really had. I didn't have a way of processing. And so when I finally started writing one day, and it was about, I started writing about just every situation. Like my grandpa had passed away like a few years before. And so I like wrote a song about that. And I was like, whoa, this is so weird. Like, I'm getting out these emotions and thoughts I didn't even know I had. Like, to this day, like, I'll have like really, really, like, if I'm having deep emotions, right, whatever it is, I don't even know how I'm feeling. I'll just start writing it out. Like, I'll just have my guitar, I'll just play random chords, and I'll somehow it just all starts spewing out, and then I'm like, oh, that's how I feel. And so
that's so interesting.
Yeah, like, I don't know, like, where a song is gonna go, like, until I'm getting there. And especially in the beginning, like, obviously, like, now my practice is slightly different, but very much the same. And so I was gonna say, for me, music is just, it's just like the tool that God has given. It's just the avenue, the tool that I am able to just slow down, I guess. I can slow down, I can process and just to go through that journey through pain and doubt, whatever it is,
So it sounds like the music you make is something that allows you to process. What about the music that you intake? How does that form you?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So same thing. I think, like, it allows me to slow down. And I learn so much from music. I love lyrics. That is my thing. Same. I don't necessarily I don't listen to a song and be like, oh, I love this instrument and this instrument. Like, that doesn't, like, ever come across my brain, I just listen to the words and like the words alone. Obviously, I like everything else, but like the words are what matter to me. And to hear a good song, like just something that makes you, something that moves you, right, in some way, something that brings, I think, music, songwriting, songs help you see something from a different perspective. Like, so, like we're talking about, like, it creates a new way of seeing something, or actually putting image to things that are invisible. So, I've been shaped by music, like when I was going through depression, feeling really numb, or then also like during that time, I could not be alone with my thoughts. Like I could not be in silence ever. And so like at night, I would play this same song by Citizens. I would play that song every single night, because even though I was like so low, and I went through so much doubt, so much unbelief, so much lack, I mean, everything. But I would play that song, and it would be the one thing that would like I said, even though I was completely shut off and I felt just like numb and dead inside and dark and like everything, and nothing that anyone said helped, somehow that song was like one tiny drop of hope, one tiny drop of connection, one tiny drop of like maybe God's presence, right? A tiny drop that I could tangibly feel, like, and that got me through the night, like, and in so many ways, music has shaped me. Yeah, just in general, like.
Well, really quick,
the truth.
Can we just even pause in what you're just talking about? Because there's a bunch of people, right, who are experiencing the same thing, and tonight they have every intention of putting music on. But I think that the choice is so important, because you can put something on where your intention is, your mindset is, I'm just going to put something on. I just don't want to be in silence. But what you put on is going to form your mind and your imagination. One of the ways that I word it is, you're giving your imagination the building blocks to build the vision.
Yeah.
And so if you give it building blocks with music that is filled with a lack of hope, a depression, anxiety, the glorification of broken relationships, the glorification of vindictiveness or vengefulness, the proliferation of sex and sexuality, like if you give it these building blocks, your imagination will build with them.
100%.
Without asking you. And I remember I was like 24, and we were going through some really rough stuff, me and wife, and just some grief that had happened to us, and some difficulty. And it was the closest I'd ever come to walking away from the Lord. Like I was exhausted and burnt in a way. And similar, King's Kaleidoscope, which came out of the same movement of music as Citizens did. That was right around the time they had released an album with the song "A Prayer."
Oh my gosh!
Super controversial song. Such an incredible song.
Incredible song, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember feeling worn out. I would think I was more angry than numb, if I'm really honest. I was just very angry. And I would play that over and over and over every day on my way to work, because it was this reminder that at least somebody else who had kept the faith had felt something similar. And it ended with this reminder from God, because I was not hearing from God. So this artist was giving me the words. Chad Gardner from King's Kaleidoscope was giving me the words that Jesus was saying to me. And it saw me through months of, I probably otherwise would have potentially left the faith.
Yeah, it's just so powerful. Yeah, like I said, it's the same thing. It's nothing different. It's just a different way, and it's just like it's just like I said. I believe God. Like there's just something in the sound waves of music that is just different. It just is.
Aren't we? We have the Psalms, right, which we know are music, which is kind of cliche to mention, but it's true. But then there seems to be, I'm going to bust out my theology brain. We don't really have music in the garden that we see.
Interesting.
Except we look into the book of Revelation, which gives us images of the cherubim singing. I think Isaiah has verses as well. And then this indication that we are also going to be singing. And then when we see the new kingdom, it resembles very similar to the Garden of Eden. It's essentially, I mean, it doesn't even have a temple yet, and it's the tree of life and all these things. And if the cherubim are singing then, we would imagine that even the Garden of Eden was filled with the songs of the cherubim. I don't know if that's true. That's a Phil guesswork, right? But it just seems to be like it would make sense. It would fit in with the story of Scripture for music to be this medium of praising and glorifying God. And part of that praising and glorifying process, the reason is to give God glory, and that is enough of a reason. But as we do it, we are formed by what we sing. And so when we sing, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty," we form our hearts to believe that, and we deepen that truth into our soul. And so yes, I agree with you. That's a very long Phil way of saying, yeah, I agree, Sarah.
No, I absolutely love it. And I could go for, no, like this, I love this conversation. And even like one thing I think about is like, how, like they say, like how like the planets and everything have music, right? They all have sound, and like how everything is working like in rhythm, like, and in unison. So it's like, I used to always like think like, like the universe is a song. Everything is happening in rhythm and like there is these sounds and waves like that are all working as one. Like I used to be like, so like people would be like, "Oh, you're so heavy." I'd be like, "Life is music, man."
Well, look,
but it is.
What you can say though is you go to the Torah, right? The first 5 books, what Latin we call the Pentateuch, and God tells the people of Israel how to set up not just anybody, but the priests to form a essentially worship band, right? Like this is how you will praise me, right? Like he establishes that in the law, right alongside the rules around sanctification and around sacrifice and the forgiveness of sins and the establishment of the tabernacle, right? In all that is also, okay, and these will be your worshipers. And fast forward, Joshua, right? Who's going to lead the march around Jericho, the symbolic first step into the reclamation, taking back the promised land, right?
Oof.
I mean, it's the musicians. I don't know, Sarah, could you have been at the front of the Israelite army?
I don't know, but you know what? But that's honestly, I kid you not, that was like life changing, like what you just said.
Oh, praise the Lord!
I think there's something in that.
There is something in that, and my encouragement to you in this moment is that those stories are real, but also we learn themes and patterns about how God works with his people. And I know someone's going to be like, that's a little cliche, Phil, but whatever. It's so true that there are powers at work in our hearts, the Jerichos of our soul, that at least in part, God uses a variety of things, but I think music is one of the things that he uses to still sound the trumpet and bring the walls down and minister to us. And it's why the early Christians developed songs, hymns. We look at the Nicene and the Apostolic Creed, right? There's a lot of good indication that those were sung initially to help deepen and remind people of the truths of, before they had the New Testament, they had the creeds. Like before they had the New Testament, right? As the New Testament was being written, they had the creeds.
Wow.
I think that's important.
I just want to live there on the ground. See all the sights, hear all the sounds. Feel the dirt under my feet. Taste the beauty of the life they breathe. My head is up in space and so my mind is orbiting around something I can't find. Oh, round it going, I never slow, and still I'm wondering why.
Okay. All right. So Sarah, as we're wrapping it up, you've been making music for a hot second and you're following Jesus and you're pursuing him. What what kind of advice would you give other artists who are kind of coming up behind you and who are going to be formed by both the world and their art? Give them some advice. Like, what do they need to take away from this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this goes into that second point that I forgot, that twofold question that I forgot to answer the rest of in our when we first started. But I think that what I have found is focus on who you really are. Focus on your relationship with Jesus. Don't focus on what you want other people to think about you or your music or whatever it is. Like, just focus on the reality of who you are and what God knows about you and your actual relationship with him. Like, actually focus on being in the secret place with Jesus, like, don't let the outside noise come in to you and your space. I think that's just the most important thing. Like, and just in general, like, because it can be so easy to want to make a name for yourself because that's what everyone else is doing. Like, but the point is, no, I'm a living sacrifice. I'm here to worship Jesus. I'm here to tell people about how good he is, right? Like, so I think that's always my biggest advice to anybody is, like, just one, be yourself, be authentic, be vulnerable, like, or just be yourself. Be yourself, be authentic, and then just be true to Jesus and just focus on him and that relationship. Focus on that being authentic as well. And then whatever comes out of you is going to be good. Like, what naturally comes out of you is what's inside of you. So just focus on who you're becoming, and you'll naturally, beautiful things will naturally come out, I think, or, true things will naturally come out. And I was going to say too, when you are authentically yourself, people will naturally connect to it, and it will be helpful. That's my thing.
Sarah, I'm deeply appreciative of the fact that you're living that out. I'm appreciative of the fact that, like, you feel like a natural extension of your music. You know what I mean? Like, I'm meeting you and I just feel like, oh yeah, this is the Sarah I've been, like, listening to and hanging out with already in your music. And I'm grateful for the work you're doing for the Lord and for the church. And I cannot wait. I heard you mentioned earlier, okay, so you might have a new album coming out?
Okay, yes, I have a new album coming out. Long story short, it's been pushed back. It's coming out, I think, September. So, September, save the date. I don't have the actual date yet. But September, it's coming out. It's going to be, actually, a lot of the songs were written like 5 years ago. So it was during the time of me coming out of that really bad depression state. So it's very interesting, but it's going to end with hope, because I now, like, glory to God, he restored my soul and my hope and my joy. And so it's going to be like just the whole journey. And I am really excited. It's like, I'm really excited about it. Yeah, that's good.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. It has just been fantastic to get to know you.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Living Room Disciple podcast today. I'm praying that my conversation with Sarah Juers was as much a blessing to you as it was to me. All the music that you heard in today's episode actually came from her most recent EP. Make sure to check her out. Follow her work. You can see some links in the show notes below. And she has a new album coming out in September, so we'll hopefully have her back on during that time. Also, you'll see in the show notes a link to our Patreon page. We invite you to come join us to support the work that we're doing to help people be formed to be more like Jesus. Huge shout out to our producer, Anissa Leib, for making this all happen, and to Eric Church for getting this into your feeds. He's our marketing manager. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Living Room Disciple, where discipleship finds a home.